Hello and welcome to another of Carl's interviews. Had a little bit of a break, trying to deal with school, holidays, kids and various other craziness, plus doing some preparation for a few exciting events I've got coming up as well, which I'll save for another time. This evening I'm really pleased to be announcing that imminently Roger Black will be joining me, and equally as delighted fairly quickly to make this a seamless start. So he should be joining imminently. There he is.
Hello.
I'm not going to say I doubted you for a moment, but there was a brief pause. Is this the first Insta Live you've done, is it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I've done lots of Zooms and lots of webinars, but I've never done an Insta Live. There you go.
Oh, yeah, I feel special. I've managed to get one unique thing in the last however many years of your career that you've been doing all these firsts.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me all right there?
Yeah, absolutely crystal clear. It's great.
Okay, cool.
So obviously, before I do any of the interviews, I try and do as much research as possible. And with some of the, I'm going to use the word younger athletes, it's a bit easier because they've not done quite as much in an athletics career or as much afterwards.
Yeah.
You've been so ridiculously busy in your entire time. It's made it quite the project.
Well, I don't know if I've been busy. I've just done lots of different things, because one of the challenges you have when you retire from athletics is you go from a world of one singular focus, one absolute clarity. Every day of your life is about doing what you can to run as fast as you can and stand on the rostrum. And then you retire, and it's a real problem. And you retire, and then suddenly, what do? And the reason it looks like I'm busy is that you try lots of things because you do. And I've had a few, opportunities throughout my life, and things change all the time. Even as we sit here now, things are changing, and so on paper, it looks like you're really busy, but actually you're just hanging in there, surviving and chopping and changing. And it was never going to be a straightforward life.
No.
In retirement. Very few athletes get that. So but thank you. I've done a few things.
I've got to say as well, you hold the, I suppose, unique accolade as well, and one you'd probably be aware of, but hasn't made it into any of your websites or anywhere else. Whenever I talk to other people about the guests I'm coming on, often they give me an opinion. Oh, I've heard of them. They're particularly good. I like them. What I've found is women of a certain age always respond in exactly the same way when I mention you. Oh, I really liked him when I was younger.
And what age is that, by the way, Carl?
I'm making no comment. It's quite a broad bracket, actually. Well, you're 40s.
You're getting older when you go from, can I have your autograph, or can I have my mum would like your autograph, and now my nan would like your autograph. You realise that, yes, I actually am now drawing my pension at 55, which I am, by the way. So.
But I've got to say, I was watching a video recently of you and Steve Batley doing some pieces. Obviously, you started last year, a lot more on camera with the work you're doing for COVID. And you certainly look many, many years younger than Steve. So if nothing else, you've got that to cling to.
Yeah. Well, sorry, dog. That is, I honestly, they all think I dye my hair. I don't. I mean, for whatever reason, the grey hair, there's a little bit coming, but I've been very lucky with the grey hair. So with Steve, it's like Jonathan Edwards. They just went from bang, to grey. It's the whole Philip Schofield thing. And Steve was the same. We started Back together, and he wasn't that grey, and now he is grey. But he looks great. He looks great with grey hair. I'm just going to let the dog out. Sorry.
No worries.
Go on. She goes nuts. The doorbell goes. So
it's one of those things that whenever you're on camera as well, either kids or animals, they've got to play up and do something. A complete smooth transition.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you spoke about transition, which I really want to come into in a bit more detail and talk about, because you've had, I suppose, almost a double career in the sense of the athletics, but then, as you say, it's been diverse, but some really interesting things. It'd be rude if we didn't kind of talk a bit about the athletics first, though, not only in terms of your journey into it.
Well, it's the most interesting bit.
Well, I suppose it depends who's on the receiving end and which areas you're talking about.
Yeah.
But if I can, I'd like to talk really right back at, I'm just talking, make it sound like you're really old again, a little way back in your younger days when you first started getting into athletics. And I'd like for, I suppose, those that aren't aware, the initial scare you had in terms of the heart side of things, and then kind of how you transitioned into the European, the juniors, etc. if I can.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the two most interesting facts about me One, that I was born with a leaking heart valve, which I still have, obviously. So I'm classed as someone with chronic heart disease, which is a very strange thing and something I didn't talk about when I was an athlete. I knew about it. It stopped me doing athletics as a kid. It stopped me doing competitive sport as a kid. I wasn't allowed to until I turned 13 properly. And yeah, that's it. That's true. That's a fact. And it's I'm much more aware of it now at 55 than I was as an athlete. But I was aware of it every day. And my father was very worried about it. The only other person who really knew about it properly was Chris Akabusi. And my dad would often talk to him privately, asking, is he more out of breath than everyone? And I was fine. I had a couple of scares, but it obviously didn't affect me. And I've been very lucky and do quite a lot now for the British Heart Foundation. And maybe that's one of the reasons that I didn't take up athletics seriously until I left school at 18. I mean, the other interesting fact about me is I became an athlete because I messed up my A-levels. I was never going to be an athlete. I had no idea how good I was. And I messed up my A-levels and wanted to be a doctor. And I had a year off to retake. And it was in that year that geography plays a huge part in sporting success. Gosh, I'm realizing this more and more. Geography is a huge factor. You need all the, I was lucky. I lived down the road from Chris Akabusi and Todd Bennett and the best 400-meter group in the country. So I was only half an hour away. And so I went to train with them. And as corny as it sounds, the rest is history, because, you find out how good you are when you run with good people. And I had no idea. I knew I was fast. I was the fastest kid in Hampshire and people knew of me. But I was never, I had no idea I was good enough to one day go to the Olympics. But you run with these Olympians who have just come off the plane from Los Angeles with a silver medal in the relay, and they're these fully clad out Nike and Adidas athletes with all the kit, and they're on this. And I, no exaggeration, I had a pair of green flash trainers and a V-neck woolly jumper, which I kept for many years. And you chase them up a hill every night, and they're amazing, and they're so fit and they're so fast, and then you get a bit closer. And then you get a bit closer, and then one day you overtake them. And Chris will say that was the day he swapped to become a hurdler, because he just knew that, okay, game's over. So, yeah, I mean, that's the truth. I wasn't that 10-year-old kid that watched it on the telly and joined the local athletics club, and that was it. As Steve Backley was. I mean, Steve Backley was a 7-year-old kid who says, that Olympic flame was lit in my belly at 7 years old, watching Brendan Foster win a bronze medal in Montreal, wherever it was. And he said that was it. And I wasn't that kid. I love sport, but I never thought I'd do it as a career, because you didn't in those days. Certainly not athletics. Yeah.
But presumably with...
So that was it. And then the rest, I mean, it was brilliant. And, just being around Akabusi and Todd Bennett, rest his soul, and Daley Thompson, who was a massive influence on me, took me and Chris under his wing, invited us to train with him in California. And when the sort of god of athletics does that, you go. And he was massive. He was just such a great supporter of mine. And then you get to rub shoulders with the likes of Edwin Moses and Seb Coe. And it rubs off. And you suddenly, before you know it, you're winning European Championships and Commonwealth Games and breaking the British record. And you don't really know how you got there, but it happened very quickly.
And then you're the one that people are looking at, and you're trying to mentor and help and advise as these youngsters come up to you. So Ewan and Jamie, I guess, and people like that look at you for it.
Yeah, I mean, Ewan Thomas will always say he was inspired when watching myself and Derek Redmond, John Regis and Chris Akabusi win the gold medal in the World Championships, 1991.
Yes.
And Ewan ran in the Olympic final with me in 1996. I think he came sixth, seventh, I don't know. Fifth, yeah. I mean, he did great to make the final. Look, the truth is, if you're young, you're fit, you're healthy, you're going to be fine. I was 30 in Atlanta in 96. There's the photo behind me. Ewan was coming through, and rightly so. Him and Mark Richardson and Jamie Bolch, they started to get closer to me. And I hung on for a couple of years, but, I'd done my bit. So it's a young person's game. I respect anyone who can stay in any event, particularly the 400 meters, for a long time. I think anyone who gets past 30 is doing well.
Yeah.
And anyone who can get back from an injury is doing incredibly well, because, of course, most of us, that's the 400 meter sphere.
Well, did I read correctly that there were only 2 years in your athletics career actually you were injury free, and they were your two most successful as well, weren't they?
No, 86, I was absolutely injury free. I didn't know what an injury was, because I hadn't been around long. My body hadn't been battered long enough,
But
you know.
at 20, I suppose it's still all right, isn't it? You're still
Well,
okay.
I hadn't trained. I'd done football and cricket and tennis and rugby. I hadn't, you know, I wasn't a highly tuned athlete. The problem was
Yeah.
I took a rugby body into the world of athletics, and it lasted just under 2 years because it couldn't keep going. Yeah, and then really, I suppose the only year that I felt, and it wasn't even a year actually, it was probably a period of about 8 months. And I relate to Kelly Holmes on this one because Kelly had the same experience in 2004. And it just shows you that if you've got a bit of talent, if you're healthy, you're going to do okay.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're always carrying an injury, if you're always struggling with your health, your mind is always on your body and you're not free. And in 96, for about 6, 7, 8 months, I was free. I had a few niggles, but it wasn't, I was free. I was free to focus on running. So, you know, the injury thing isn't just your body hurting. It's the fact your mind is so focused on the pain and so focused on the physio. You're on the physio table all the time. So, yeah, 86 and 96. I like years that end in 6. So,
It's like, I'm a Spurs fan, and for a while we were doing the years ending in 1, and now we just don't win anything ever, so it doesn't really count at all. It's interesting you said about obviously the 91, the relay gold, and I think it's only with the 30th anniversary of that and the Tokyo Olympics people have really realised not only what an achievement it was, but within the context. You hadn't beaten USA in a major competition since 1936. Certainly weren't favourites on that day either, and I remember part of the post.
And we haven't done it since.
No. And then within you saying about Chris, within his post interview, he said, "I don't run a flat 400 because I'm not even the fastest 400 runner in my own club. So why would I do it nationally?"
True. I mean, it was an amazing day. You know, it's one of those races, and for people who aren't necessarily on top of it, it was 30 years ago, and it was the world champs in Tokyo, and we beat the Americans. And it is, you know, it's hard for me to say it, but I mean, it's true. It is a well-loved race. It's a well-known race because myself, Chris and Derek in particular have made our careers on the speaking circuit talking about it. So we keep it alive. But it was, if you had to write a script, it was the scripts to be written, because not just the underdogs coming from behind and winning, but the fact that, and I think the thing that had the biggest impact was that everybody, when they watched it, they knew us. We weren't 4 young kids. No. Everyone had seen the 4 of us run and they knew us. And then you had the combination of myself and Derek being the only 400-meter runners, pure 400-meter runners, Chris a 400-meter hurdler and John a 200-meter runner. And there was a chemistry between us. There was a camaraderie. There was some, and I think we recognised it was a moment in time. We had a chance to win, and we changed the running order. And yeah, the other thing is, you know, if you've got Chris Akabusi running the last leg, you know, he's still the biggest character British athletics has ever had by quite a long margin, I would argue. Yeah. You know, just as pure, genuine, authentic characters. You know, he was extraordinary. So it does help when you've got someone like him, you know, on the team. But yeah, it was a wonderful moment. And, you know, even things like David Coleman's commentary, which is wonderful. Yeah, and, you know, questioning the order and it's just everything about it. And yeah, we did a big interview for Athletics Weekly, which went on for about 2.5 hours, went late on into the night, because the 4 of us are really genuinely good friends. We meet up quite regularly. The other 3 in particular play a lot of golf together, and I join them 2 or 3 times a year playing golf with Steve. But, you know, Chris obviously is I'm connected with most days, but there was a genuine friendship that I think came through the screens, and I think it's a rare thing.
I was going to ask, well, because obviously you say about there was a tactical switch up and you opened, so the starting leg as opposed to the last. How did that feel for you? Because I can imagine when you're in the last leg, you're often in that position where the destiny's in your hands because it's been handed over to you finish. Whereas if you start, you're kind of then reliant on your teammates, aren't you, to continue the work you've done?
Yeah, but they're totally reliant on you. Yeah. And the problem with the first leg of a relay is it's just rubbish. It's just so difficult because you are disconnected from the other competitors because of the long stagger.
Yes.
And the other thing is, no matter how fast you run, when they read out the times, yours is so much slower than everybody else's because you went for the standing start. And so to the uninitiated, it's like, oh, what a load of rubbish, you know. Look, you know, we made that decision as a team. I mean, it was it was the only way we could win. I mean, I'm not saying that arrogantly. You know, I should have been world champion 3 days before that race. It's my one regret. I was beaten by a guy called Antonio Pettigrew on the line, and I should have won. I can't ever say that about running Michael Johnson, but I can say that about Pettigrew. Yeah. And so I wasn't scared of anyone. There was no one in the world that I thought could beat me over 400 meters. Or I was certainly as good as. Yeah. So if you put me on the first leg, we're going to be up there. We're probably going to be in the lead because no one else is going to run their best athlete first. Yeah. So, and we just knew that if we weren't in the lead after the first lap, the Americans would have just gone. Yeah. And it's not that it changed how we ran, it changed how they ran. Because it just does. You know, it's a different type of race, a relay race. So, so we just reversed it. We put me first. We put our slowest runner in theory, Chris, last. I don't know if he was our slowest runner, but and we just went from the front, me to Derek to John to Chris. I mean, it was, look, we make it now into some big tactical genius decision. I mean, you look at it now, of course, it makes absolute sense. But it did change the event because now people choose the right order for the day. They don't just preempt it. Yeah, they don't. So it was a significant moment in the history of the event.
It's interesting because I didn't know a lot about Pettigrew until we started. I did the research and realised that obviously he admitted drug use for a sustained period, but never confirmed that on that particular event he was using, and then also sadly took his own life, as I understand it.
He did. And actually, he was one of the athletes that I actually, it's funny, people are always interested to know what's it like at that level when you're touring, you're around the circuit and you're running the same guys in Zurich and Lausanne and whatever. He was a nice guy. He was, none of us really, we were never mates, and none of us, certainly Michael Johnson certainly didn't talk to anyone. He did actually have a relationship with me because he was connected to me through Daley Thompson. But Antonio was someone I used to, after a race, I would warm down with, as was Andrew Valmont, who was also in that race. He was one of the athletes that I liked and got on with, but not socially, but just respected. And then, obviously finding out he took drugs really surprised me because, he was good, but he wasn't that good. So you think, well, actually, I always thought he probably is clean because he's not, crazy good. And then suddenly you haven't heard of him again. He'd been around a long time. And then sadly, when he took his life, and I don't know the details why, leaving a young son, which is so sad. I don't know if it was, I don't know. But yeah, very sad. And actually, the truth is, we feel that whenever we talk about and watch the race, it is there. We laugh and joke about it, but the sadness is he's no longer with us.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And you mentioned Michael a couple of times, I guess, and we need to talk about 96 as well and your silver, but I suppose, and also the influence Michael would have had, I suppose, directly and indirectly in your career as well, because he was always someone at a sort of level.
Well, Michael didn't just influence my career. I mean, Michael single-handedly changed the 400 meters forever, because Michael is the first pure sprinter, someone who can run under 20 seconds consistently for the 200, which I could never do, by the way, to then take on the 400 meters, because most sprinters just aren't going to take it on because it's too hard. And Michael came along in 91 and took it on, and then was ill in 92, Barcelona, but wasn't running the 4 in the Olympics. Quincy Watts won it. But then from 93 onwards, that was it. And Michael proved undeniably that the single most important thing is speed. And he changed the way I trained. I mean, I changed in 94, 95. I trained like a sprinter, and I also did the endurance stuff. But my emphasis was more on the speed than it was on the endurance. And up until then, I'd done it the other way around because that's how you did it in Britain. Yeah. And, it's one of the reasons I ran so well in 96, because I took my 100-meter time down by about 2/10, and I took my 200-meter time down by about 3/10, I think, and was placing third in the country behind Linford Christie and John Regis. So I mean, Michael changed the event, and people always say, "Oh, it must have been awful to run with Michael Johnson because you never beat him." I feel very lucky to have run with Michael Johnson, and I'm incredibly fortunate. If you're going to win an Olympic silver medal, win it behind someone that everyone knows.
Yeah.
And win it behind someone that everyone goes, well, of course you're never going to beat him, because then it becomes a success. Because all medals aren't the same.
No,
so yeah. I mean, yeah, very fortunate to have run with him. Very fortunate.
And it is interesting because not only his unorthodox style, but you kind of, especially in the 400, you watch him race and the ease in which he keeps pace at that first 200, and then you just watch him just kick in another gear that so few athletes ever have.
Because he could. Because you see, that was the bit for me, was like, he could run to 200 in, I can't remember the splits now, I would have known them, but let's say I would get through to 200 in about 21.3, 4, 5. And the point is, if you're Michael Johnson and you're going through in the same time, no faster, you are jogging, you are painfully jogging. For him to run that slow. Yeah. So that's what I worked out. I said, well, if I can get to 200 much easier, then surely it's going to make me stronger for the last 200. Yeah. Rather than, let's be strong for the last, it was about speed. And that was it. That's how he changed the event forever. And he did change it. Because you look at all the great runners now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all running incredible times, but they're all great 200-meter runners. I mean, they're all able to run low 20 flats. Well, only Michael was able to do that in my day.
And it's interesting as well, because I watched one of the interviews subsequently as well, and it showed for me just how much you developed as an athlete. That in the final in '96, when he did start pulling away, something inside your brain says, "I'm not going to go with him. I'm going to run my race." And that's a real maturity as an athlete, isn't it? Because it must have been hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what they call experience. I mean, the hardest thing to, the thing about the Olympic final is that it's the Olympic final, and the stakes are so high. I mean, they're so high because you have to wait 4 years if you get it wrong, which happened to me in Barcelona. And you can have all the best plans, worked out, but the gun goes in the Olympic final, and someone outside you goes crazy, and you start racing them. The 400, you're going to get to 80 meters out and you're going to go backwards. And that happened to me a lot throughout my career, because I never really mastered the event until 96. And I knew in 96 that two things. I knew Michael was going to kick at 220, 230, 240. And I knew he would, because he always did. But I also knew that if no one was ahead of me with 100 meters to go, I wasn't going to come third or fourth. And that was the key for me. That was the key. And then, of course, you've got to do it. But I had rehearsed it thousands of times. Yeah. I mean, I had rehearsed it. So, fortunately. And that's why when I crossed the line in Atlanta, people often say, what's the feeling? They ask what's the feeling like on the rostrum, but they also say, what's it like when you cross the line? And the overwhelming emotion for me was relief. Relief. Because this was my last chance. This was it. Yeah. If I hadn't medaled in Atlanta, I wasn't coming back. And I just remember crossing the line. And it was just relief that I'd done it, and I could actually move on, And it wasn't jubilation, it wasn't euphoria, it was relief. It was relief. Because I should have won the silver, and I did. So
and lots of people were kind of expected you to as well, but which doesn't take the pressure off in any way or make it any easier, does it? You'll do all right with the silver.
Well, no. The problem is that what people don't know is there were probably 4 of us running for 3 medals. Yeah. If you had to bet, Michael was going to win gold, and there was a combination of 3 of us who could easily have won those 2 medals. Because they weren't far behind. No. I was good. I wasn't that good. So it was relief. Thank God for that.
And it's obviously, as you said there, you knew then there wasn't going to be another Olympics, and a couple of years after you start realizing that your athletics time is over, you need to start focusing on other things. Yeah. But which I can imagine
I've just seen, Carl, my niece is now watching. I've never done this before. I can now see that my niece has watched. A friend of mine from Farnham has watched. James Ellie. Isn't that great? Well, shouldn't you be doing something else on your Monday night, you lot? It's EastEnders on.
It's when you have it as well, and I've had with some of the athletes that people come on and just generally abuse them. Sort of friends or other athletes come on and give them grief, and they're trying to work out and read it as they're going along. Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to ask me a serious question. So.
Yeah, very much so. In fact, I do need to ask. Obviously, in 1991, we had the 4x4, the relay, etc. So also the year that the Roger Black fan club was started as well, was it?
Was that 91?
Yeah. So does that mean it's its 30th anniversary this year as well? Have we missed that momentous occasion?
You missed it, yeah. There are no more
Damn it.
T-shirts left, and the subscriptions, we had to curb it. It was just so popular. That was a mate of mine who's actually a national coach now. It was a mate of mine who, yeah, this is all pre mobile phones and internet. I mean, this is interesting. This dates me. In 1996, I got telegrams in Atlanta. People sent telegrams to say well done.
Right.
You know, so we had the Roger Bat fan club. It was a bi-monthly magazine which took forever to make, and I don't know. Those were the days.
Did you start it? Was it Mike that started it? How did it come about?
Well, the fan club.
Yeah.
It was a friend of mine, Fuzz Khan. He's a national high jump coach, and it was him who decided to do it. So yeah, all down to him.
Obviously, you'll be at the running show this weekend. I'd absolutely love if someone turned up in the audience with one of the Roger Black fan club T-shirts on.
They do sometimes. The other thing that I get a lot, as does Chris Akabusi. In the old days, we used to do a thing for a company called Super Schools that used to go around schools, and you'd have a photo with every kid individually, and they'd raise money for the school by doing sit-ups and press-ups and stuff like that. And we go around the country, lit hundreds of photos a day, and that was how we sort of got by, you know, in the winter. And I now meet people who are in their 40s who have still got the photo. And I always say the same thing. I said, well, at least one of us has changed since then, because they're like 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. Yeah. I said I haven't changed a bit, but they were in those days it was very different. We were out there a lot. We were out meeting people. We were out connecting with people in probably a deeper way than now, because now we have this format and you can connect with people instantly. It took a bit more effort, and so the Roger Bat fan club was an effort to do. And it was, an effort for people to buy, which they did. So,
do you think in any way, if things had been more accessible, so obviously you'd have competing now, where obviously you've got that social media, you are so accessible to people as we're proving here, it would have changed anything about how you transitioned?
Yeah, I would have struggled.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm inherently quite private, which is the challenge in business and whatever, and that's okay. As an athlete, I was an introvert, definitely. I didn't want anyone around me. I didn't want anyone to watch me run. I would, 4 or 5 days before a race, I would go into a bit of a shell, except for my training partners.
Yeah.
Very focused. And I've always wondered now, what it's like for athletes, because, you look at what people say about you, people know what you're doing. No one knew what we were doing. No one knew where we were. It was, except for when they turned the telly on. And I loved that privacy. But what was interesting back then, because in those days, athletics was on a lot. It was on midweek. Mm-hmm. We were in the papers a lot. You win the Europa Cup and you're on the back page of the Sun. The Europa Cup almost doesn't happen now. So, I was very lucky. There was a lot of television. There was a lot of profile, but it wasn't every day. It wasn't this constant, and people couldn't comment on. People couldn't say anything about you, except for the journalist. The one journalist that might write an article. But now people can say what they want. I would have struggled with that. I would have been affected by that.
It's interesting. When I spoke to Jamie a while ago.
Hello, Lorna. Lorna signed on.
When I was talking to Jamie a little while ago, he was saying that he actually thought he'd have liked more social media back in the day to kind of boost his profile and presence.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Who's that? Jamie Bolch?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Jamie Bolch loves the attention. I mean, look, remember what his hair was like? Do you remember his hair?
Yes, I do.
That was his thing, and then it all fell out.
We don't talk about that. It's a bit of a sore subject.
Love Jamie.
And what I do want to talk about is obviously you've got the Roger Black fan club and a published author as well. I made it sound slightly better than it is.
I said the words, someone else kind of wrote it.
But
the obligatory autobiography, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But at the risk of stealing the thunder of any potential reader now that may want to get hold of the copy of the book from the RDA.
You can get it on eBay for 2p, I think.
Again, there might be people at the running show bringing a copy there for you to sign for them.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
But I really enjoyed in the preface kind of how the name came about. So you want to just share that with people?
Well, I was always going to do. It wasn't going to be, running for glory and things like that. And it's a true story. My coach, as a guy called Mike Whittingham, was a massive fan of Van Morrison, the Irish singer. And we were in a Heathrow Airport about to fly out with the British team to, I think it was the Europa Cup or something. And we're all in our tracksuits. And Mike spots Van Morrison in the distance. And I spotted him. I said, Mike, it's Van Morrison. He went, oh my God, Van Morrison. Mike, oh God. And he went up to him and he's there and he's sort of just not having a clue what's going on. And Mike said, hey, Van, I've always wanted to meet you. And he said, oh, okay. He said, what are you guys doing? Actually, he wasn't American, he's Irish. So I don't know why he's American. I said, what are you guys doing? And Mike said, oh, this is the British athletics team. This is Roger Black, and there's Linford Christie and Daley Thompson and whatever. And he said, oh, athletics, right? Is that like running and jumping? And we said, yeah. And he said, so how long's the course? And for some strange reason, I always said, if I ever write an autobiography, I'm going to call it How Long's the Course?
Yes.
And that's why I call it. That's stupid. No. But different, right? Different.
What a great story as well, because it is, as you say, many of the people had the titles like, oh, my epic win or the glory, etc. It's something a bit different.
Thank you.
I've got, what have we got? 4 days, I think, try and get hold of a copy to then bring to the weekend and kind of wave it in the audience or bring it to the stand as well. So I want to sort of jump on a little bit. So we athletics finished, and by your own admission, you're obviously a very high profile athlete at this stage, both from the success you've had historically and more recently. So did you have any idea in your mind when you were finished athletics of the direction you wanted to go?
Yeah. I had two things I knew. I had two opportunities. Look, you need a bit of luck, okay? And I was very fortunate. Well, luck maybe is the wrong word. I ended my career. I had my greatest day towards the end of my career. So many athletes have their greatest day early and they spend the rest of their career trying to get it back, and they don't. So they fizzle out. So myself, Chris Akabusi, Kelly Holmes, I retired within 2 years of 86 in 98. And I was just happy to leave. I was happy to go. And I had opportunities. So two things happened. Firstly, the BBC approached me and said, would you get involved in the presentation of the athletics? And I said, great, why not? So I sat with Des Lynam and talked about it. And then they evolved that into would you present, which I did for a while, and then that ended, but whatever. And the other thing was Chris Akabusi had retired a few years before me, and he'd really made a career out of corporate speaking. And he's the first sports person to do that properly. And he was my best friend, and okay, he's a totally different personality. But I realized then that actually there was a market for hearing our story and doing that. And so I was able to sort of see what he had done and then basically follow that and create my own speaking business, which we still do, and I do now on my own, all with Steve Backley, and Chris still does. I mean, we've obviously had a tough time the last few years because of COVID. We haven't been in the room, but so one was fortunate, the television, and the other one was I loved it. It was something that, and the great thing about speaking is, corporate speaking is a lot of people hate doing it, but a lot of people just find it. I have a story to tell, and I think if you and coming back to the relay, Carl, when you have a presentation and you end it by showing that race, it's going to be okay. And Chris and I, myself and Derek Redmond have that, and John Regis, who doesn't do much of it. We have that race, and it's a lovely story, and it's a great way to finish the presentation. So that happened, and then you get opportunities and bits and pieces. But being serious for a second, it's not the same as being an athlete. It's not the same as that clarity and that just knowing, having the dream of the Olympics or the World Championships, and that the banter. You're not with the guys anymore. You're not having the banter. You're not. That's gone, and a lot of sports people miss that. Yeah. And the day that changed for me was quite a few years later, which was when Steve Backley approached me early in his retirement, and basically 3 years prior to the 2012 Olympics, basically said, we went out for a beer, and he said, do you want to build a business with me? Because we've got an opportunity here and I'd like to do it with you. And we didn't really know what, how. And we basically took our individual speaking into another sort of realm because he's really into the psychology of coaching and stuff. And so now we deliver more than just speeches. We help corporates and athletes and people with the mindset. But the thing about myself is I work better with other people. I'm not great on my own. You know, I wouldn't have achieved what I did as an athlete without Chris Akabusi or Daley Thompson, and I get that. And it's the same in business. So I'm very fortunate to have a business partner in Steve Backley, who's had a very similar life experience to me, an athlete, you know, and, you know, we're 12, 13, 14 years in, and it's brilliant. You know, it's just, yeah, I feel like an athlete. When Steve and I got together, I feel like being an athlete again. So it's been really good.
And what I find really interesting as well is I've seen some of the talks you and Steve have done about the mindset thing. I've seen some of the other bits you guys have shared. And it's really interesting that there are so many similarities or skills you can take from athletics when you're talking about being driven, goal setting, targets, etc.
There are lots of similarities, but there are some differences, and I think we acknowledge the differences. We certainly don't ever say to anybody, this is what we did, this is what you need to do, and you're going to be successful. You know, we're all different, and you know, there's a price you pay for high focus performance in sport. It doesn't make you a particularly rounded individual. And in business, you have to be a little bit more rounded and a bit more empathetic. Athletes aren't particularly empathetic. So, you know, we recognize that and are fascinated by that. And that's why what we really do is we just share our experiences and then discuss. We don't tell people what they should do. We do share a lot of the tools that we used as athletes, whether it's visualization or goal setting, or there are certain tools that people like to know about, and if you can apply that. But we really are storytellers. In essence, we are storytellers, and we're fortunate to have a story that we can show a video of and a medal. But I think with myself and Steve and Chris, I think it does come from the recognition that at the Olympic Games, you know, everyone is talented at the Olympic Games. You know, some people maybe a little bit more, and talent really isn't enough in sport. You know, you can have talented kids who are never going to make it because they just can't be asked, or they just, you know, they always got excuses. You've got less talented kids who just love it and will always be there on time. And if you can put both together, which, you know, I think Chris had, and I think all Olympians you see have, and you're lucky enough to be surrounded by great people, then you've got a great chance. And, you know, you see it in our sport with some people who go on to do extraordinary things post-sport because their careers were affected when they were athletes. So the chief executive of World Athletics is one of my very, very best friends, a guy called John Ridgen, who was, you know, beating Colin Jackson when they were 18, 19, 20. And then he tore his Achilles tendon. And John was a training partner of mine and a very close friend. He's now the chief executive of World Athletics and a very, very successful businessman and whatever. So he has applied his drive, as has Seb Coe actually, and taken it to another level. But he, you know, because he didn't get to achieve what he was capable of achieving, because no matter how talented he was and how hard he worked, his body couldn't let him do it. So I'm very grateful as an athlete to, yes, I had injuries and setbacks, but I was able to come back and I had good people around me and whatever. And if people can learn from that, then that's brilliant. But we are all different, so we never prescribe, put it that way.
It's interesting with the speaking side as well. That obviously, as you say, I've listened to Chris speaking. Clearly, you are very different. But what I would say as well is it's something the Paralympian Danny Crates said to me a little while ago, and he was talking about speaking when he first got into it. He said part of it is that, as you say, the ability to tell a story. He attended a function out in Dubai, and the nephew of Tenzing Norgay was there, talking about what he'd done up at Everest, and he climbed it up. And Danny said, "I'm really nervous now." I said, "Look at the quality of this speaker." But he said, actually, he wasn't a very good talker, and by the time he started, he was losing the audience. And I think from what I've seen of some of your presentations, where you come across in a genuine, sincere way, I think that warms the audience to you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, you know, I guess that there's a. It's not simply I've got a story to tell and I'll just tell it. Yes, it's the way to tell it. You know, you know, and I think the other thing you've got to do is be empathetic to your audience, because people aren't interested in the detail. I mean, a few people might be, Yeah, we're talking at the running show this weekend.
Yeah.
And actually that audience will probably want to know the training programs and stuff like that. Okay. But in general, people don't want to know the detail. They want you to take them. They want you to share the experience that they can't relate to. So all you're doing is, in essence, you're saying they don't want to know what it's like to run 44 seconds because no one can relate to that. I can't relate to that.
No.
What they want to know is you had a dream. You ended up on the Olympic rostrum. What happened in between the two? Yeah. Because we can all relate to that, because clearly there was adversity, clearly there was success, clearly there were other people involved, clearly there was change, clearly there was, so we can all relate to that. So I don't like listening to sports people speak. I like listening to business people speak because I want to learn. Okay. Yeah. If I've got a business question, I'll phone John Nugent or someone like that, from a business perspective, someone who will have an experience that I have not had. And that's what, when people are watching a sports person talk, you've got to take them there. You've got to take them to the Olympics because they're never going to go there. And they want to know just a little bit of what does it feel like? Give me something that I didn't know that maybe is relatable to me. And that's how we listen. That's how we watch films. That's how we read books. We read them selfishly. We listen to people selfishly, so I like to listen to people who have done something that I will never get to do. And that's all we do, that's what we do. That's what a professional speaker should do.
I did a charity
and tell a
event
few jokes as well.
Of course. I did a charity event last year, and Sharon Davies came along to do the speaking for me. And she was doing that. She's weaving one story about swimming with broken arms and dad shouting. And then she was with Derek Redmond's obviously incident with his hamstring and his dad jumping over the barrier. Yeah. And that was speaking in a way that we couldn't relate to in one sense, but then really could, her struggle, the journey and everything she'd gone through. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Derek, by the way, is a great example. Derek, for what it's worth, and it's all subjective, okay, and we can argue it. Derek Redmond's the most talented British 400-meter runner I ever ran against.
Wow.
And that's nothing against, and we're talking margins here. We're not talking. That's taking nothing away from Ewan Thomas or Mark Richardson or David Grindley or I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he was so good, and we never saw the best of him because of his injury problems. And but what he has done is he's made a great career out of talking about the injury he had at the 92 Olympic Games. And his dad jumps on the track. And it's a worldwide recognised story. So actually, okay, he didn't win any Olympic medals individually. He didn't have the career that he would have wanted. But my God, he's got a good story, and he's got a unique story because no one else has got that story. No one else's dad ran on the track and walked around the track with his son.
You said obviously about the running show coming up this weekend. So are you going to go there to talk a little about your career and a little bit about Roger Black Fitness? Well,
I'm there. I'm sort of there for two reasons. I was always down to speak at the running show. It's been moved 3 or 4 times in COVID. I've spoken at the original running show, which was amazing. And I'm speaking on Saturday morning. It's been Kelly Holmes kindly swapped around a little bit because unfortunately I can't be there the whole weekend because when the date was changed, I have a prior commitment, which means I have to leave on Saturday afternoon, which is so frustrating. But because I now run Roger Black Fitness, my fitness brand, which was under license for 15 years with Argos, but now is run independently by me and my teams through as an online through rogerblackfitness.com. So we're doing that. We're early days. We are exhibiting at the running show. It's the first time the products people can see them, touch them, look at them, and it's real. And I'm there until early Saturday afternoon, and my team are there for the whole weekend, and we'll be hopefully there in Birmingham at the next one, and this, that, and the other. So I'm there as a speaker, but I'm also there as an exhibitor, which is quite exciting. So really,
are we going to see you on one of your treadmills?
You've been to the running show, Carl. I mean, it's just and it's just this is going to sound really, but runners, you get a room full of runners, and they're just really nice people. And they're just really nice people. And I remember speaking at the running show a few years ago in Birmingham at the NEC, and I really felt for the first time for a long time, I felt like I was an athlete again. I was around athletes, and it was just lovely, And these aren't Olympic athletes. There are people like yourself who, people who are involved in running with lots of different stories, not winning medals. These are people who are, you know, lost loads of weight through running, or people who just love running. It's changed their lives, the mental health and all that stuff. And I'm that sort of runner now. I run, my wife Jules and I run most mornings. We do a nice jog in the woods for our mental health and our physical well-being. You know, that's me, and I get it. And if Roger Black Fitness can help people get fitter and healthier and move at home on their bikes and their treadmills or whatever, then that's what motivates me now, and it's fantastic.
No, I love it, and I couldn't agree more. It's the bit I'm doing is a mental health piece on the Sunday, and that's exactly around this running community. And for so many people, how they found friends, they found support. Mine was, I was in the forces for 13 years and really missed that camaraderie. In the same way you said about you had it with the athletes, it's just not the same when you're out and in a different environment.
It's well, I mean, sorry, I didn't know it was your background, because a lot of forces people relate to the transition from leaving sport to into civvy life, and it's harder for you guys because you've had a routine. You're around very similar people. You live in a world of banter, which is accepted and is part of the dialogue, which we had on the running, you know, and warming, you know, when we were training, and then that goes. And you haven't got people to banter with, you haven't got people who you're sharing a vision with, you haven't got people in your case who are there to support you and protect you, and you protect them. And it's very, very different. And that's why running with other people is such a wonderful thing. And people often say to me, well, they always say, you know, oh, how do I run? You know, how do I get motivated to go running, or how do I train other people, and what advice can you give my young kid who's talented? How are they going to run fast? And I say, in that respect, I say, well, if you want to run fast, go and run with fast people. So there you go. But actually, if you want to run at all and you're struggling for motivation, then find a jogging buddy, find someone to run with, because it's just, and it's not that it's more fun. It's not that it's easier. It's what I learned with Chris Akabusi. We trained together every day, and we never let each other down. I would let myself down, but I was never going to let him down. So I was always going to turn up to training as he was going to do for me. And that's what a training group does. And so, running with other people is great. And the beauty now, of course, you can do that online as well. Yeah. So you can do that through Zwift. So, you know, a lot of people use Zwift on my treadmills. And I love that, you know, and I'll use that on it. If I'm running on a treadmill, I love that. You know, I may listen to music, but sometimes I'll go on Zwift, and it's the same concept, isn't it? It's fitness alone is great for some people, but for other people, you just do it with other people. It's more fun.
Just some visions, because I read again, obviously part of the research, you with your mixtape made up, champagne souping over another bit. So I wonder whether your music taste has grown or changed that much.
No, I haven't changed at all. No, I did. I made a mixtape. Athletes like routine. And in '96, I'll tell you what I did in '96. I learned more about myself than ever before. And I learned that actually I didn't prepare with pumped up music. I prepared with actually, you know, quite calm music and introspective music. So I made this is the day of tapes, you know, Walkmans. And I made a mixtape which I warmed up to every race. And I can remember most of the songs and where they came. And every time a song came on, I would be in a different warm-up phase, and it was just the same. And it was my anchor. It was my thing. And Champagne Supernova was on it. You're right, Oasis. Yeah.
And interesting. Obviously, it's once an athlete, I suppose mentally always an athlete as well in one sense, and because it's a certain type of mindset you'll never lose. And obviously you're never going to run the times you did or achieve the way, but do you ever have occasions where that little competitive streak comes out again and you push yourself, especially I'm talking physically, not so much in terms of emotionally or intelligently in terms of business? Even if it's with the twins and them trying to outdo dad.
No. B, you started this conversation asking me about my heart condition. Yeah. And at 55, I respect my heart condition a lot more than I did a few years ago. Fair. So I don't push my body like I used to. So I used to go on cycling trips with my mates, and I don't do that anymore. If I'm running, I'll never go there. I don't need to. I love to swim. I love to exercise, but I'll never quite go there. Yeah. But the other reason behind that is, rightly or wrongly, I think as you get older, the secret is to do a little bit of exercise more regularly rather than smashing it. You know, when I train to be a 400 meter runner, what you're doing things, you're going to places physically and mentally that you shouldn't be going. But you're doing it for a reason. And the reason is to win an Olympic medal because, you know, everyone else is doing it. Well, now I don't have that motivation. Am I competitive? I don't think I am. But, you know, I'm probably at my most competitive on a tennis court.
Okay.
But I only play doubles. I can't play singles. Right. It's too much for me, but I play doubles.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I think when you retire, you sit in one of two camps. You sit in the camp that I sit in and Chris Akabusi sits in, which is, oh, blimey, that's over. Now I'm going to sort of enjoy, you know, do sports. So he plays a lot of golf and I play a lot of football, but not competitive. Just enjoy sport for sport's sake. Or you sit in the other camp, which a lot of people do, which I just want to keep pushing. I want to keep competing, and they find other sports and they do that. I don't have that. I really don't have that. I let that go because it was too hard, Carl. I mean, you know, I can sit here now and talk about the medals and the pictures and all that, but my brain has forgotten how hard it was. Because, you know, let's not ever kid ourselves. It was really, really physically and mentally hard. But the great thing is, the older you become, you do forget that. You forget the pain and you forget that. And I could never go there again. So I ran the London Marathon in 2000. And I remember finishing that going, I have no desire to do that ever again or try and better my time. Yeah, are you going to come back next year and try and run faster? No.
No, I've done that.
I've done it. I've ticked it off. Okay. I'm not going near it again. So that's where I sit. But I like a challenge. So maybe, you know, I'm not, you know, I am a bit competitive, but not extremely.
It is, for me, it's always interesting as well, because I've been very lucky with some of the people I've spoken to, and I'm doing some challenges with them. Dean Macy has got us doing a burpees challenge with him next month. Yeah. And he's going through that same stage of he's going, my body shouldn't be doing this. Why am I suggesting and trying to do this still?
But Dean's a great example, and I don't know Dean very well, but Steve knows him. Steve Backley knows him quite well. But there's a guy, I don't know how many people know this, you will know this, who was a decathlete, you know, you know, wasn't a Daley Thompson, but he was a good decathlete, you know, Commonwealth champion, I think, and you know.
Yeah, he was,
Yeah, up there. He retired, but he had another passion, and he's got a passion in his life. It's fishing.
Yes.
He's a very, very, very established fisherman.
He is.
So he has a passion, and I think that's the challenge with sport. When sport has been your passion and then you retire, it's quite hard to replace it and find something to be as passionate about. And I've never found anything to be as passionate about than athletics, from a sporting point of view or a hobby point of view. Whereas Dean, actually, fishing is his real passion. And I think he's as passionate about fishing as he was about athletics. So you know, he's a good example of someone who has been able to sort of move on and find something else. Most people don't.
No, and I find it quite sad almost when I talk to a lot of athletes, especially those either recently retired or having to retire through injury, that they have struggled because they haven't had that passion, or even there's for some that didn't quite make it, that weren't in that 1%. And therefore, you know, they've done a bit of speaking part, they've done something else, and all of a sudden they're finding themselves, they're trying to do a normal job again, where the Olympic medal, everything else has gone now, and they're just, as they refer to it, an everyday person.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's really tough, and I'm not, you know, and I'm very grateful to have, you know, there are many people who've got Olympic medals, especially now. We win 65 medals, right? In my day, we only won one gold, and that was the rowers, and you know, so it's all everything's relative, right? And I'm incredibly grateful that, you know, if I won a silver now, you know, well, you won a silver, we got, you know, 25 golds, so we didn't win a gold. So there are Olympic medalists who people won't know of, and it's tough. But I think you have to do two things. I think you have to recognize you've learned a skill set that you've applied to your sport that you can translate to something else, but you've got to get passionate about something. So I am passionate about business. I am passionate about business, and I like growing business. I like building. I like, you know, I like the challenge of that. But you have to. I think it's a bit much to think you can replace standing on the Olympic rostrum, because that's slightly greedy, I would suggest. But you can certainly find something else to get passionate about, and it doesn't have to be, you know, work. It doesn't have to. It can be family. It can be something. But I think if you haven't got something to get passionate about, it's quite difficult, because as an athlete, you're so programmed to be goal orientated. If you've got nothing to aim for, you drift, and it's very hard when you see athletes that are drift. And I have drifted at times. I'm not saying I haven't drifted, but I recognise that I need the clarity, and I develop the clarity in other things. So it is very tough. It is very tough. But you know, you've got to find something else to get not as passionate about, because I don't think I could ever be as passionate about anything as I was about running the 400 meters. But you need to get a bit excited about something, because that's how you're programmed.
And that hasn't happened to be your dancing career or your cooking career or MasterChef or anything like that?
No, I've done quite a few of those. I've done MasterChef. I've done. There's one coming up soon that's been recorded that I did all right on.
Right, okay, we'll have to look out for that. Because you lost out to Matty Dawson in the final, didn't you, when you did MasterChef?
I lost to Matt Dawson. He wins everything. I lost to Matt Dawson. He took it so seriously, Carl. He was training with the head chef and nobody every night. I mean, you know, come on. I've never taken these things too seriously. Maybe that's a fault of mine. Strictly Come Dancing, I just loved it. Great fun. Came at the right time for me. I just lost my job at the BBC, which was a blow. And then Strictly I did it with Denise Lewis, which was lovely. Yeah. And that was good. But I was never any good. I just did it. Never danced since. Same with MasterChef, but you know, that was a brilliant skill to learn, and I do cook. But yeah, you do these things, but they're not a career. They're just a bit of fun. Yeah. And but yeah, I was never passionate about any of those things. But just nice to be asked, really.
Well, listen, Roger, I've got to say thank you for this evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. With all the research in the world, I'm never going to replace listening to some of the stories, how you've told me experiences as well.
Thank you. Well, you did your research, and I'm not there on Sunday. So are you there on Saturday?
I'm there on both days. Yeah, so I'll definitely come over and say hi.
Saturday, so come over, and if you're looking for a treadmill, I can recommend a really good one. You know.
I've got to, because Joe Pavy's hosting, and we've been doing a thing for a little while together, and every single show she does, she mentions about how old she is. So I'm waiting as she opens Saturday morning for her to make a reference to her age as well.
Well, that's her USP, isn't it?
And she's running a 16-minute 5K saying, "Oh yeah, I'm really slow these days." Madness. Yeah, but she's great. She's lovely, Joe. She spoke just after me at the initial show in Birmingham, and it was lovely to spend some time with her. So yeah. But I'm really looking forward to it. As you say, the biggest thing about it is just there's such a good vibe from the entire time. And I'll look out. And there's been a couple of people asking questions. One's asked for your mixtape. I don't know how realistic that request is.
There's a bit of Aztec Camera in there. There's a bit of Sting in there, I think.
Liz Millington has asked.
A bit of Paul Weller, some Paul Weller in there.
Liz Millington asked, are you still sporting Lycra? I'm
not embarrassed to say there's also a Bee Gees song in there. And it's it's You Win Again. I didn't know, I got beaten, but never mind.
Are we going to wait? Is there going to be some music when you come on stage on Saturday? Do we need to get something ready?
Well, I don't know, but whenever I speak, when I used to speak before lockdown, you would always come onto the same tracks. It would either be, Born to Run or, and then someone would always make the classic mistake of oh, I know, Roger Black speaking. Let's put him onto Chariots of Fire, and they press play, and the first minute of Chariots of Fire is like one note.
Yes.
And suddenly you're standing there going, "What?" So stick to Born to Run, I think.
Right, noted. Well, and finally, for anyone that wants to follow more about what you're up to, learn more about Roger Black Fitness, where's the best place they can find it?
Yeah. Well, the best place, please, is go to rogerblackfitness.com. That's where we have folding bikes, folding treadmills, rowers. And then for myself and Steve Backley, it's backleyblack.com. Steve's big passion is property. So we have a property, we work with the property business as well. And Steve is just so passionate about property, and I'm lucky to have him, and we do that together. So it sounds great, doesn't it? But but the main thing is rogerblackfitness.com, and have a look, see what I'm doing.
Fantastic. And thank you, Roger. I want to see you on Saturday.
Cheers. Thanks, Carl.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Good night.